They did a lot of really disgusting things to these prisoners as well. And he developed pneumonia after guards flooded his cell with cold water as a tactic to stop the prisoners from getting rest. Like, they did so much disgusting stuff to these guys. And I just want to know, like, how is this not considered?
It should be a crime, right? It should be a crime.
But like, how?
Well, they
how
let it
have
slide.
we as a nation not had a reckoning about these extreme human rights abuses? It's just mind-blowing.
Even when President Obama announced that he had stopped the torture program, he refused to criminally investigate the senior officials who authorized it, claiming that the U.S. needed to look forward, not back.
Everybody, and welcome back to Undoctrination. I'm Maggie.
And I'm Olivia.
And this week we're finally reunited. Both of us have been traveling so much. I just got back from a European summer vacation, which was epic. And Olivia just got back from Los Angeles. How was that, Olivia?
Did a little trip to Vegas for HotepCon, which I go to every year. This is the third year they've done it. Then spent like 2 to 3 weeks in LA. And now I'm back. I'm jealous of you and your little European summer. What the, like... This is white privilege, by the way, guys.
Oh my
this is white privilege in action.
On.
If you've ever wanted an example, this is
Listen. Okay. You know, vacationing is expensive. I will say that. But I think, you know, this is my first year that I've ever really traveled at all. Like,
you went on a global tour. What are you talking about?
Well, I mean, I figured out a way to make the plane tickets cost effective. And then also my big trip was in Argentina, where genuinely you will save money going to Argentina. Like, all you'll have to do is take care of your bills back at home, and then you're going to save a ton of money, like eating and renting in Argentina. And it's pretty awesome. But I will say, just like, I never really traveled before this year, and I had only been overseas once when I was 18, and it was a huge deal. And obviously all of this travel I've been doing is a huge deal. But it really just goes to show you, like, if you're around people who value that, you both will set aside money to, like, make it happen.
When are we going on our trip, Mag? We need a girls' trip.
I know. Do you want to go to Mexico, maybe?
Yes.
That could be fun. Ooh.
Yes, absolutely. I've never been overseas. The most exotic place I've been to is Canada. So I need to do some international traveling.
Absolutely. Although I heard Canada's quite fun. We actually did a podcast with Peter Carroll, who's from Canada. So we'll link that in the description if you want to check it out. This week, though, to kind of go to a more darker note, we, and really the entire country, honored the victims of 9/11. We're filming this on Tuesday, so 9/11 was yesterday. And it's been over 20 years since this huge loss of life and senseless tragedy happened. So we wanted to take today to talk about some of the policies that happened in the aftermath of 9/11 and how those are still affecting us today. But this is a very sensitive subject. Obviously, we're going to be very respectful, especially to the families of victims and those still suffering from medical complications from the aftermath. I know a lot of first responders passed away because they got cancer because of all
years
the like, toxic,
later, which is insane. Years later,
horrible.
You might think you're in the clear, then 15 years later, suddenly you're dying.
Yeah.
And that is just. It kind of just speaks to the gravity of it, because I didn't really know this until we did some research, because obviously there have been masses of other horrible terror attacks around the world. And many people know that actually more Muslims are the main target of terrorist attacks around the world, because they tend to live in more terrorist, like hotbeds, essentially. But I had no idea that just World Trade Center Tower 1, just that going down, made it the largest terrorist attack in the world.
Wow.
I had no idea until today. And obviously, I mean, we know that the casualties were nearly 3,000 people, and that is a huge amount. But just with that one tower made it the worst extremist attack in the world.
That's really unbelievable. And I feel like, let me know if you feel the same way, Olivia. I'm from the South, and this happened when I was probably 2 or 3. So I have no like personal memory of this going on. Obviously, my parents do. But also, I didn't know anyone who was affected. But I know a lot of people in New York. Anyone you talk to in New York or really northern New Jersey, every single one of them knew like tons of people. Like they can list you people that they knew who passed away or were affected by 9/11. So it's hard for, I think, our generation who grew up right as it was happening, like we were babies or were born right after, to understand the extreme psychological impact of this event. Like, I don't think America had ever really been introduced to terrorism at this scale before. I don't think anyone in general had. Like, it's hard to imagine that happening today. Like, even though we have become really used to these mass casualty events and, mass shootings have been happening a lot in America, and we've seen a lot of terrorist attacks. I think even to this day, that happening would rock like the psychological foundation of America.
That's so true, because we've grown up seeing so many terrorist attacks. I remember the Boston Marathon bombing. That was a major one in my memory. I remember them in other countries. I remember the Christchurch, New Zealand church mass shooting. That was another one in my memory that was like super traumatic for me, just because all the footage that was on the internet at the time. And so to imagine another September 11th attack happening now, especially with the advent of camera phones and social media, it would just be insane. It would just be absurd. And it's crazy to think that you and I, because I think I was like 8 months old when 9/11 happened. Because I was born in 2000. I was born in January 2001.
So you were really a baby. Aww.
I was an actual baby, but I do live in the DC area. I have almost my whole life, and I do know people who obviously they were adults at the time, not a baby, but they worked in DC. And it's weird that I guess it's not weird considering the level of casualties that was different, but a lot of people leave DC out of the 9/11 conversation. It's very much a New York City centric memory, I suppose, just because they had the majority of the casualties, which I do understand in that regard. But the Pentagon was hit too. The Pentagon had over 100 casualties. And then, yeah, people don't even know that.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, for people in DC, it's a memory too, especially because there was all these security risks, because we didn't know what was going to be hit next. We later found out that the plane that went down in a field in Shanksfield, I believe, Pennsylvania, was either meant for the White House or the Capitol. That could have been even more catastrophic. I mean, that could have taken out almost an entire branch of the federal government. So people down here, I think, are maybe not as on edge as people in New York are around this time of year, but still very much so. And of course, as we grew up in a post 9/11 world, we're used to things like TSA. We're used to things like the Department of Homeland Security. They didn't have all these, we can debate on whether these are false senses of security or not, which I'm kind of the opinion that they are. But at the time, they had nothing of the sort. You could just get on a plane back then.
That's so crazy to think about, just walking through an airport and just hopping on the plane. Like, you don't have to take your shoes off.
You could walk your loved one to the gate. You could be like, bye, honey.
Crazy. That's crazy. I wonder if all of these restaurants and everything popping up in airports happened after TSA was put in place. I'm sure they were able to start jacking up the prices at that point.
Oh yeah.
Which
Especially
is kind of an odd thing to think
how
about.
You can only buy a water bottle after you get through TSA, and the water bottles at the airport are like $20. Like, this whole thing is turned into a racket now. It's a security theater. Also, flying back from LA, I totally forgot my purse. And I only realized it when I got to LAX. And so I didn't have my credit cards. I didn't have my ID, passport. anything with my name on it, because of I think when you get there and if you have an emergency and you like got your ID stolen, you can provide like a prescription, a credit card, a piece of mail with your name on it. I had none of those things. They treated me like I was gonna pull off some type of attack, but they still let me through. But they literally swabbed everything I had for like bomb residue. They were like wiping it down and testing it.
Oh my gosh. So I brought a little candle back for my roommate. Every time I go on a trip, I bring back a little goodie for her because she usually takes care of my cat while I'm away, and like vice versa. But I got her this really cute candle. It was in the shape of a tulip from Amsterdam. And that sent off the alarms when I was trying to fly back. So they swabbed that for bomb residue, which, you know, obviously it was fine. It was all clear. But yeah, actually, so I'm sure you've heard this before, but there was an internal investigation that happened with the TSA, which stands for the Transportation Security Administration. This is supposed to make sure that nobody can get any harmful things on the plane, like guns or knives or bombs or whatever. That internal investigation found that these undercover investigators were able to smuggle through these things 95% of the time, which is unbelievable. Unbelievable.
And Maggie, how many terrorist attacks has TSA actually foiled?
I'm sure.
It's zero. The number is zero.
It's crazy because I'm a person that has extreme anxiety around flying. I say a prayer every time I board an airplane and take off, and then also right before I land. And I do the same for my boyfriend because he travels a lot. So like I'm like always doing the sign of the cross, praying for a safe flight. So the TSA is there for people like me that have high anxiety. And this fact that like they don't catch even 95% of things that go through, that gets rid of all of the feelings of security for me. Like it's all a big show that they're putting on that like negatively impacts travel and everything.
Yeah,
but that's
security
kind of,
theater.
Yeah, but that kind of leads into other discussions. That wasn't the only thing that happened in the aftermath. And like, if that was the only thing, if TSA was the only thing that happened in the aftermath, the only encroachment on our freedoms was that we had to take off our shoes and walk through a scanner and get groped by an angry TSA agent.
That part is bad. That part is bad. But yeah,
it is bad. But I don't
could let it slide if that was the only thing.
If that was it, maybe I could let it slide. But the sheer total loss of life that happened in the aftermath, and I know you're going to get into this, when it comes to all of the foreign entanglements that we engaged in, the wars that we engaged in, and the torture that we committed against innocent people, and all of the innocent people that we murdered in the aftermath, that it begs to be discussed, right?
Yeah.
And I was talking to Olivia about this before. There's a lot of conspiracy that happens around 9/11 because of just the amount of encroachment the government was able to make into our daily lives. We're also going to talk about the Patriot Act and privacy. There's a lot of conspiracies around that because they were able to take so much power during that time. So people think there was something nefarious happening behind the scenes. I don't think the conspiracy really matters to this discussion because tragedy happens regardless of if it's orchestrated or not, right? And every time a tragedy happens, the government will propose a solution that sounds good in the moment, but has disastrous consequences and effects in the long run and even in the short term, right? So regardless of all the conspiracy theories, which I don't really believe, we're going to talk really about the facts that we know, like what actually happened, the policies that were pushed and that came into effect, and also the side effect of even more loss of life that happened in response.
Yep. And when you mentioned conspiracy theory, just for the listeners, we're talking about, we're not making any claims that Bush did 9/11 essentially in this podcast.
No, sorry.
That's what we mean.
Sorry to disappoint.
Well, just wanted to clarify, at least speaking for myself, because there are other quote unquote conspiracies like invading Iraq on the premise of them having weapons of mass destruction that we later find out that our government and our administration essentially lied to us. That was considered a conspiracy theory at one time. We know now that Iraq did not have weapons of mass destruction capabilities at that time. So we know that to be a fact. So we're just going to go over, I guess, the confirmed facts. And I'm not even going to say I don't believe in any other conspiracies, because I kind of do. But for the purposes of this podcast, we're going to go over the confirmed facts. So I did a lot of research on the war crimes in particular in response to 9/11. I used a lot of different sources. The main one was Human Rights Watch, which I found to be, at least the sources on 9/11, to be pretty unbiased and definitely called out the U.S. government for what they did. So for context, there was 19 terrorists that committed this suicide murder attack. 15 of the 19 were Saudi, 2 were from the United Arab Emirates, 1 was from Lebanon, and 1 was from Egypt. The Bush administration essentially declared a global war on terror, which had a focus on Afghanistan, where Osama bin Laden, the head of al-Qaeda, was purportedly hiding, and Iraq. So Afghanistan and Iraq were really placed on the burner when neither country had actual terrorists carry out these attacks. So this is already getting kind of fishy, but what the global war on terror did was essentially remove all sorts of barriers from what is usually considered normal acts of war. So when in the past, the United States may be at war with a country, we're at war with that country. We still follow, at least we still should have, not saying that the United States has always done this, but we still should follow due process. We still should follow different international conventions and laws to war. But with the global war on terror, we kind of threw these out the window because everybody was a suspect to us at this time. We had lots of different suspects. We were pointing the finger at everybody. And the administration could deem suspects found anywhere as quote unquote enemy combatants and detain them without charge or trial until the quote unquote war ended, meaning indefinitely. So that laid the groundwork for indefinite detentions at Guantanamo Bay. That laid the groundwork for people being tortured.
And these are without trial.
These are without trials. These are without the necessary production of evidence like you would see in a normal criminal trial. It was just completely just thrown to the wayside because these are, it's wartime. These are wartime protocols because we're in this global war against everybody who could be a terrorist. So this war was used to justify killing suspects wherever they were found without any real evidence. This is from Human Rights Watch. Quote, international human rights laws requires law enforcement officials to arrest suspects whenever possible and to use lethal force only as a last resort to stop an imminent threat to life. But by treating presumed terrorists as, quote, combatants, the U.S. government justified killing them, usually in strikes by drones or other aircraft, the way a combatant on a real battlefield could be attacked, even when they were far from any battlefield involving U.S. forces. So this happened in places such as Yemen and Somalia, where we did not have official battlefields ongoing at the time. The Bush administration then invaded Iraq due to their alleged development of weapons of mass destruction, which was later found to be false. Another justification for that invasion was an unfounded link between Saddam Hussein's government and terrorist organizations, in particular, al-Qaeda. This was all kind of put into place by then Secretary of State Colin Powell at the UN Security Council meeting in 2003, stating that there was evidence that Saddam Hussein was in possession of these mobile sites, which were WMDs or weapons of mass destruction that could supposedly launch missiles. Ultimately, these mobile sites turned out to be harmless trucks, but the damage was done because in the estimated number of casualties, this ranges from 151,000 violent deaths as of June 2006 per the Iraq Family Health Survey to over 1 million excess deaths per the 2007 Opinion Research Business Survey. So the United States contributed to over 1 million deaths of Iraqis because we thought they had weapons of mass destruction after 9/11 in this so-called global war of terror.
Wow. That's really disturbing. When you were talking about the torture of people that were being held indefinitely, it reminded me of these photos that were released. Do you know what I'm referring to?
Yes. If you're talking about those very disturbing photos of military personnel doing what you said, torturing suspected terrorists without due process. Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy. I found an article from NPR where they interviewed the subject of that really famous photo where he has his hands out and he has that hood over his face. And he has these like wires attached to him for some reason. He said that there was a culture of abuse and humiliation inside this prison, and that an American soldier threw grenades into his and other detainees' cells. They did a lot of really disgusting things to these prisoners as well. And he developed pneumonia after guards flooded his cell with cold water as a tactic to stop the prisoners from getting rest. Like, they did so much disgusting stuff to these guys. And I just want to know, like, how is this not considered?
It should be a crime, right? It should be a crime.
But like, how?
Well, they
how
let it
have
slide.
we as a nation not had a reckoning about these extreme human rights abuses? It's just mind-blowing.
So even when President Obama announced that he had stopped the torture program, he refused to criminally investigate the senior officials who authorized it, claiming that the U.S. needed to look forward, not back. So the end result of that is that torture, it's a crime now on the books, effectively remains a policy option because we refuse to prosecute and criminally investigate people who carry out the torture. The 2014 Senate torture report from the CIA showed that the agency torture detainees and higher government officials who authorized the torture up to President Bush, they all violated the law. So theoretically, President Bush could have been criminally prosecuted and investigated and could have been formally designated as a war criminal, except Obama didn't want to do that.
Wow.
And, you can come to your own conclusions. Yeah, you can come to your own conclusions about that.
Yeah.
The committee, this is a quote from Slate. The committee report is full of damning evidence that shows extensive and brutal torture, even beyond the limits prescribed by government lawyers, and which apparently did not yield valuable information. So these pictures that you're talking about, this horrible torture where they're flooding people's cells, waterboarding them, tying them up, this did not even produce information that led to the finding of terrorists. So that's very heinous.
I just wonder, one, what that did psychologically to the people living there. Like, what the heck? Also, what was the reason? Like, I'm sure we made a lot of money doing all of this, but
as Fee talks about, and as libertarians talk about it a lot, the military-industrial complex is basically the largest money laundering scheme in the world. As soon as Colin Powell tells the United Nations Security Council they have weapons of mass destruction, we need to go to war, think about all the money that gets flooded. Think about all the money that Congress is going to allocate to the military. Think about all the money that all these private military contractors, these civilian contractors that work with the military are going to get. I mean, this is a multi-billion-dollar racket. So there clearly is motivation to lie about this. Whether Colin Powell was straight up lying or whether that was his actual impression, the end result is the same. Like I said, we're not going to get too deep into conspiracies if this was purposely orchestrated or not. But the end result is over 1 million Iraqis died. And we basically create new terror cells because of this. Because if I'm living in Iraq and I did not do anything to personally cause 9/11, and George Bush or Barack Obama drone strikes my wedding or something, I would be surprised if somebody didn't get radicalized against the United States government by that. Wouldn't you? Wouldn't you be like surprised if that didn't create more terrorists?
Absolutely. Ron Paul has this really epic video. I think it's called Chinese Troops in America. We'll link to it. And it talks, it basically places an American in the shoes of someone living under U.S. occupation. But instead, he flips the script and it's China doing it to America. I think it's such a good video for people to go and watch. We are so, I hate to use this word, but we're really privileged. Like we are really sheltered from a lot of the horrific things that happen to people all over the world because of U.S. foreign policy. And so it's not tangible to us, like what these things we're supporting actually do to people. And around that time, so our support for war was super, super high. Like this was, I mean, the Republican Party of today is not the same Republican Party of the 2000s. Very different, very, very different. I don't know if you watched the debate, but Nikki Haley was probably one of the few people who voiced support for Ukraine and the U.S. helping Ukraine. And it made her extremely unpopular. So Republicans and conservatives have really changed their mind about U.S. occupation in other countries. And I think it has a lot to do with this. Like, I think people realized bit by bit what our occupation in other countries was doing to people. And I also think people just wanted to stop spending money.
It's
doing
money.
All of this. Money is the biggest driver, which I also care about the money, but you know, as a human being, I care about the lives that were lost.
It is a valid point to make because you really wonder, do a lot of these people even care that 1 million Iraqis died? A lot of people don't even bring that up. A lot of people just talk about bloated military spending, which these are both points. These are both points to be made, but you know, one to me is a little bit more important than the other. But to you and I, this is actually really interesting that we as Zoomers, as Gen Zoomers, actually pick up on this because it reminds me of that one quote from, I think it's The Dark Knight Rises. It's from Bane, but just bear with me, Maggie. Just bear with me. This is serious. Okay,
hit me.
No laughing.
Let me hear.
Okay. Well, it's because we were born we were raised, I should say, in a post 9/11 world. They didn't even have the Department of Homeland Security before 9/11. Isn't that insane to realize they didn't even have TSA before that? It's kind of insane. They didn't have the Patriot Act. So to me, it reminds me of the quote where Bane says, "Oh, you think darkness is your ally, but you were merely adopted by the dark. I was born in it, molded by it." So we grew up.
We grew up in the darkness.
I didn't see the light until I was already a man. We grew up in the darkness, okay?
Wow.
We were not even supposed to see the light. That this was government encroaching on our rights, that this was security theater, that there was kind of some greater act at play. And not saying that, oh my God, Bush personally drove a plane into the tower to create TSA. I don't know that. It's possible though, but I don't know that. And what? Anything is possible. Anything is possible. But there was evidence that came forth to support the theory that the United States government at least lied to implement regimes in countries suspected of quote unquote terrorism. With the 2005 release of the Downing Street memo, in which the then head of British Foreign Intelligence Service, I think it was M16, right? That's the British intelligence service. But Richard Dearlove wrote that the intelligence and facts were being fixed by the U.S. around the policy of removing Saddam Hussein from power. In addition, in this April 2007 report, Acting Inspector General Thomas F. Gimbel found that the Defense Department's Office of Special Plans, run by then Undersecretary of Defense Douglas J. Feith and a close ally of VP Dick Cheney and Secretary of Defense Donald Rumsfeld, purposely manipulated evidence to strengthen the case for war. So if we just ignore all the 9/11 conspiracy theories that have to do with who actually orchestrated 9/11 and just focus on who was behind us going to war and killing 1 million Iraqis and going to Afghanistan and blowing people up, we do know that our government orchestrated this.
Yeah, I actually think this is one of the strongest arguments for opposing taxation, because one of the things that enrages me the most about like to go into the financial argument for just a second, and also a moral argument. Your money is forcibly taken out of your paycheck constantly. And that money then gets filtered into programs that are used to kill innocent people. That is what drives me up a freaking wall about taxation. Like, this all goes to support policies that I genuinely think are inhumane and evil and completely against my values. And I think most people's values, right? But I guess up at the top, they aren't really thinking about lives in terms of real people, but just numbers.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, we as the American people paid military personnel to torture people.
And guess what? They convinced us to support it because we underwent a significant tragedy. I mean, like, that was shocking and traumatizing for a large portion of the population. The same thing happened during COVID. Whenever you have a tragedy that shocks an entire country like that, be on the defensive. Like, you need to put your defenses up against any kind of proposed plan that the government is offering you to come and help you and save you. It is usually a Trojan horse for many, many, many evil, terrible, bad things. They are coming to rip away your freedoms, and they're doing it under the guise of keeping you safe. Right. Which is crazy because they're really bad at doing that.
Look at all the terrorists they created and funded indirectly and directly through this. But it's similar to COVID because do we know for a fact that the DNC or George Soros or Dr. Fauci or whoever they want to say created COVID in a lab and dispelled it amongst Americans? Do we know that? No, absolutely not. We don't know that. But what we do know is that the government and all those people took that tragic event and took these losses because we have seen a lot of COVID deaths over the last 3-4 years, which have been unfortunate. But they took that and used that to their advantage to further take away our rights. So we had to get the vaccine passports. We had to do the masks. We had to fill out all these forms. And it's just, you know, there was a lot of people who were suspicious of it, but just like how during the Iraq war, do you remember? Okay, so they're not called the Dixie Chicks anymore because that's racist.
But yes, do you they're called the Chicks now. Yeah. But I grew up on the Dixie Chicks. Thank you very much.
We love the Dixie Chicks.
We love the Dixie Chicks. And
but do you remember when they got canceled? Do you remember when they got canceled for opposing the Iraq war? And they like stopped getting playtime on American radio.
Dude.
The same thing happened now when people talk about, I'm not wearing a mask. I'm not falling for this lockdown stuff. I'm sending my kid to school. I don't want to do the vaccine passport. We get slandered as anti-American. You hate science. You hate old people. You hate health. You hate everybody. And so the Chicks and everybody else who spoke out against the Iraq war was painted with the same broad brush that they're anti-American. And we saw that happen before with Vietnam. Do you remember what happened with Jane Fonda? She was called Hanoi Jane for speaking out against the Vietnam War.
Oh,
so we
my
see
gosh.
We see this every single time there's a war, every single time there's a tragedy. And as soon as somebody is a dissident, as soon as somebody speaks out against what the government is doing, manipulating us into believing that all of the Vietnamese people are bad or that we need to go perpetuate regime change in Vietnam or the Middle East or whatever, or we need to mask up and keep our kids home from school so we don't all die. Every time somebody points out this is a fear tactic, a fear-mongering tactic, they get painted as anti-American, anti-patriot. So I do have sympathy for those who supported war after they were traumatized, after they may have even lost a loved one. Because as you said, in New York, everybody knows somebody that was at least supposed to be in the World Trade Center that day. I mean, thousands and thousands of people worked there, worked around there. So it's completely plausible and reasonable to assume that these people wanted revenge. These people wanted safety. So I'm not judging people who grew up.
Yeah.
I'm not judging people who grew up being like, we do need to go to war, because the military and enlistment like spiked after 9/11 because so many young men were like, I need to protect my country. And so many young men were led astray. And for 20 years, we were in Afghanistan. There were kids who weren't even born when 9/11 happened who died in Afghanistan. They weren't even born on September 11th, 2001, and they went to die in Afghanistan at like 18, 19 years old.
Unbelievable. Aside from war, right, at home, people were really worried about their safety as well. So what is the government going to do to protect us here? We need to go find the terrorists and kill them and anyone who was ever even slightly aided in their efforts, right? We need to eradicate terrorism, which, by the way, I don't think it's possible to eradicate terrorism. But not only do we need to do that, we need to protect ourselves here. So we need to equip the government with resources and tools and communication channels to identify these terrorists before they launch their attacks and harm the American people. What a noble effort, right?
Sounds good to me. Let's do it.
Sounds good to me. Okay. 45 days after 9/11, roughly. Let me find the actual date. I think it was October 23rd when this bill was introduced. Okay. This bill was called the Uniting and Strengthening America by Providing Appropriate Tools Required to Intercept and Obstruct Terrorism Act of 2001, also known as the Patriot Act.
Oh, I recognize that name.
Yeah. So if you're a patriot, you must support this act.
It's so great how Congress is just naming stuff like support the Baby Seals Act.
Yes.
In the fine print, we're clubbing baby seals to death. But
the Patriot Act, where we protect the American public by spying on the American public. Basically.
I love that for us. And if you have nothing to hide, then you have nothing to worry about.
Right, exactly. So confirm this law was passed only 45 days after the attacks of 9/11.
Oh, wait, introduced or passed?
It was passed only 45 days. And you know how I said it was introduced on October 23rd? It passed the House on October 24th. It passed the Senate on October 25th. And on October 26th, George Bush signed it into law.
Here's me thinking I was going to correct you, and no, it actually did happen that fast.
It was that
But this speaks to the mentality, I guess, that the United States was in. We had to do something fast. George Bush was like, this is my perfect opportunity to enact regime change in Afghanistan.
I don't think it was George Bush. I think it was Dick Cheney. But that's... Have you ever seen Vice?
I haven't.
I think that's what it's called. It's a great movie about Dick Cheney's rise to power.
It was probably both of them. But if you can, speak to a little bit about what the Patriot Act actually did in terms of like the average citizen. What did we agree to? Did we sign away our rights?
We agreed. Yeah, we did sign away our rights, but we had no idea what we were doing. And so I'm going to list off the things that it gave the government to do in just a second. But one interesting thing I'd like to point out is that only 66 House members voted against it. That's against 357 House members that voted for it. 66 voted against. All of them were Democrat except for 3 Republicans, one of which was, my number one guy, Ron Paul.
King.
Thank you, Ron Paul, for protecting our freedoms.
It's insane because now, don't you think that would be almost reversed?
It's totally flipped. It's crazy. So the majority of the people that voted against it were Democrats because at the time, Democrats were more anti-war, which is crazy because in just these past 2 decades, it's been a complete role reversal.
Send $1 trillion to Ukraine. Let's take down Russia.
Complete role reversal. But the military-industrial complex and, the people that are willing to go lobby for them, they will move to whatever party will take them. So it's not surprising. All of this has to do with money, in my opinion. Either way, in the Senate, only 1 senator voted against it, which is just unbelievable. Russ Feingold, who is a Democrat from Wisconsin, was the 1 senator to vote against this bill. On May 26th, 2011, this is a long time, 10 years after this was passed, Senator Ron Wyden, a Democrat from Oregon, said, "I want to deliver a warning. When the American people find out how their government has secretly interpreted the Patriot Act, they will be stunned and they will be angry." People did not understand or know what they were getting themselves into. This bill was communicated as a way to punish terrorists more harshly, and to get local law enforcement, state law enforcement, and then the federal government, the FBI and the CIA, to communicate better. That's what they said it was to do. They basically claimed it's really hard for us to go out and find these terrorists. We just really need a bill to like address these problems. Like, it'll be great. It'll be fine. It's fine.
It'll be great. It'll be fine.
It's completely fine. That's why we all just signed it over without really reading it. And so here's a list of things that it did. Okay. Allowed law enforcement to use surveillance and wiretapping to investigate terror-related crimes. It also allowed federal agents to get court permission to use roving wiretaps to track a suspected terrorist. Delayed notification search warrants. That basically meant that like they didn't have to, like when they did obtain a search warrant, they could just come in when you were not there and like take your things. So this was to prevent terrorists from finding out they were suspects.
This has happened to some of my Boogaloo friends, by the way.
Wait, what?
This has happened to some of my Boogaloo friends. Yeah.
Oh my
I'm not going to
gosh.
name them, but yeah.
That's horrible.
Like they've literally like not been home and their house got raided.
Dude, I can't. They could obtain bank records, business records. And then there were other even more extreme things that happened. Basically, this allowed the federal government to collect bulk data, like phone records and internet metadata, like your communications with people on the internet. They could do bulk data sweeps every day on everyone in the country. Like, they did not need a search warrant to get sensitive, private information about you anymore. So
but if you have nothing to hide, don't worry about it, Maggie.
Yeah.
Or else you're not a patriot.
Of course. The ACLU was an organization that from the jump was like attacking the Patriot Act, which thank God, like sometimes they do stuff correctly.
We don't like the ACLU anymore,
we don't,
but they used to be good.
This was very based. So they did a great infographic and found that between 2003 and 2006, the FBI issued 192,499 NSLs. Those are national security letters, which are issued by FBI agents to get personal information from people, but they don't need a judge's approval. Like they don't.
So the FBI could just be like, we suspect this person is a terrorist. Okay.
Yes.
Let's
collect all of their data. And 192,499 of these were issued. They led to one terror-related conviction.
Yo!
And
I thought it was going to be more than that.
And allegedly, this conviction could have occurred without the Patriot Act even having been passed.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Isn't that just dandy? Because when you think about the terrorist attacks and the mass shootings that have taken place within the last 10 years, without fail, the vast majority of them have been on the FBI terrorist watch list. Already.
What are they doing?
They've already been hit with the red flags. They've already been reported. When I think about this, I think about the Boston bombing, the older brother that was that carried out the Boston bombing, Tamerlan Tsarnaev. Russia had already alerted the U.S., hey, we picked up this guy talking about jihad. We think he's a terrorist. The FBI did like 1 second of investigation and he never showed up on any type of list because of a quote unquote, oh, we misspelled his name. So they never went to get it. They never did anything.
Yeah,
and then
I find
he ended
it really
up
curious.
killing several people at the Boston bombing.
Yeah, I find it really curious that despite having all of this information on people,
just all of
this information on people, we continue to have constant terrorist attacks. And by terrorist, I'm also defining terrorist as the mass shooters that roam around America and terrorize children and
the
random
Parkland
people
shooter,
in public.
Law enforcement already knew about him too.
Every single time they have the most extensive trail on the internet that people on Twitter are able to find in like 2 seconds.
Dude,
as soon as they get a name,
4chan
2
posts, their
seconds.
Reddit history, everything.
It's crazy. And it's like you have access to all of this information that's public, like the rest of us, and you can't identify these people.
They were probably monitoring these people's keystrokes as they typed their manifestos on 4chan.
So what exactly do they do? I don't get it. I don't get it. So also this Patriot Act authorized something that people call sneak and peek searches.
That sounds nice.
So essentially, this is that delayed search warrant thing. So they could delay giving notice to people who they were searching, which violates the Fourth Amendment, right? We have protections against search and seizure. And of these, in 2010, these sneaks and peeks, 76%.
It makes it sound so innocent and cute.
Sneaks and peeks. Yep. They're just going to come rifle around in your things. 76% were drug related. 24% were other. I'm assuming financial related crimes because I, through doing research on this, realized that the Patriot Act was used a lot for like finance crimes.
So the police
like
just
money
went in
laundering.
and took people's like cash and drugs, basically.
Yeah. Exactly. And less than 1% were terror related.
Love that for us. So you're not a patriot if you don't support this, guys. You're not a patriot.
Yeah.
I don't even deserve to wear my Patriot shirt right now because I don't support this. I'm so sorry, y'all. I'm culturally appropriating.
And back to these NSLs, so national security letters. Between 2003 and 2005, the FBI made 53 reported criminal referrals to prosecutors as a result of over 100,000 of these NSLs. This is according to this is according to the ACLU. So of these 53 reported criminal referrals to prosecutors, 17 were for money laundering. Remember what I said? A lot of this was used for money laundering. 17 were related to immigrations. 19 involved fraud. And how many involved terrorism? 0. 0 involved terrorism. So essentially, we just in the name of defeating terrorism, we gave the federal government an immense amount of resources to spy on us. And they have essentially done very, very little with relation to terrorism. And frankly, I don't feel like America is more safe under all of this. Like, I do feel that the frequency of mass shootings and all of these things keep increasing. There's more radicalization happening every single day. And these government agencies aren't doing anything to protect me. And I frankly don't feel like giving them more resources would help.
Yeah. I mean, if TSA didn't stop any terrorist attacks, if the Patriot Act didn't stop terrorist attacks, if these delayed search warrants didn't stop any terrorist attacks, what are we even doing, guys?
I don't know.
It's money laundering.
I don't know.
That's why we keep calling the military-industrial complex, and I guess we could call this the whole like terrorism security theater apparatus, because this extends beyond the military and is now in law enforcement and other agencies. It's money laundering. It's legal money laundering because it's a racket. It's billion, trillion, whatever, how many dollars racket.
There's a lot of fake businesses out there, okay? And the government is in the business of running fake business.
We need the Better Business Bureau to go and like knock on TSA's door and be like, what are y'all doing?
The government loves running a good fake business.
Why are you swabbing my sandals for bomb residue, ma'am? I didn't do anything. I just forgot my ID.
This is a lot of money making happening, but also we gave the government access over a lot of our data and gave up so much of our privacy, and Americans had no clue. No clue.
It's funny because like our CIA agent that's like assigned to probably both of us because he had to just like watch both of us at the same time is like listening to this right now before it's even up and out and out and uploaded on YouTube or anything. He's like, "What? They're making some points.
They're making some good points."
They know what's
like,
up.
All right,
Shut it down.
They're kind of spot on.
Shut it down.
So Americans didn't really understand what was going on. As we saw in 2010, that congressman issued a warning like, hey, y'all don't understand what's really happening here. Okay. You know, it's like when someone goes on Twitter and they're like, I know something about this famous movie director, but I'm not going to tell anyone what it is. It's like,
okay,
we're hinting at it, but we're not ready yet to spill the beans.
And the person is like Woody Allen. Like, dude, we know
about Woody Allen. Okay. But people didn't really know. We weren't really aware. And then Edward Snowden.
Oh, King.
Edward Snowden, who was a government contract worker and worked for the CIA, drops a little information bomb.
Oh, he just sent some emails out. I don't know what the big deal is.
Yeah, he was just, reporting.
Just had to return some video.
He was just hitting the federal government with some facts and logic.
Yeah, cope and seethe. Now they're coping and seething forever.
Yeah, basically. And Edward Snowden is in hiding, but he has a beautiful family and he's living in Russia or something. He's
like Russia. Yeah. Shout out. I mean, I don't want to say shout out to Russia, but like kind of shout out to Russia for hiding him. I don't know.
Anyways, Edward Snowden.
Russia tries to warn us before a lot of these terrorist attacks, and we don't be listening. So we don't be listening to them.
Edward Snowden blew the whistle that the NSA had been doing bulk data collection on Americans. This included collecting all of our phone and internet records. No rhyme or reason. No, like, okay, this person is communicating with a terror cell in this country. We're going to pull their phone records and look at it. None of that. Everyone's phone records were being collected.
Just in case you had like an unsavory Google search or anything that,
right to jail. Yeah. So this got released in 2013. Edward Snowden, God bless him, has been hiding since then. It's been a decade since Edward Snowden released this information. And Olivia, we were probably too young to really understand and grapple with how much this changed the national conversation. But Pew Research ran a poll 2 years later in 2015 and found that 25% of people said they like fundamentally changed the way they used the internet after this was released. Like people were shook. Okay.
Does using an incognito tab on Google Chrome count? Because I'd be using that, but I feel like the government can still see me.
I think we need some VPNs or something.
We need some VPNs.
We need some VPNs.
Don't we, folks?
So we are not sponsored by any VPNs, by the way. But if a VPN company wants to sponsor us, please do. So people were shook by this and started to change their behavior on the internet because it's creepy, right? People having all of this data on you is creepy. Except for you and I, Olivia, this has been how it is forever. So we're just like, yeah, they have our internet data. So
that's crazy. As long as I've had like an internet life or a profile on the internet, they've had access to it.
Yeah.
Well,
and I want to pose a question to the audience right now. You may not currently be scared about all of this data collection that happens to you. But what happens should like worst case scenario, a tyrant comes into power and they want to limit your ability to speak freely in opposition to what the government is doing. Let's say they go to the archives and have everything on you.
And now you're on a terrorist watch list.
And can use this to blackmail you. That's terrifying. I think, and like, if you think that's not possible, literally go to Google right now, type in CIA and then the word operation and click on literally any search result that pops up. And you will see the kind of brutality the government is capable of against the American people. Of course they'd be willing to do this. We think we're free, but we're not.
If the wrong person comes into power, my Twitter DMs alone will get me like literally strapped to a table in Guantanamo Bay. Like strapped to a table.
Olivia, you have to be careful.
And there's a table next to me of like different metal instruments they're going to shove into my eye sockets. Just my Twitter DMs alone. Dude, if it's everything, if it's my Telegram, yo, goodbye. Goodbye, Maggie. It's over
for me. All right, if you're using that, you're definitely on a watch list, Olivia. I'm just letting you know.
I thought they
Telegram,
can't. I don't know.
Dude, I think just having that app on your phone, they're like, all right, that's one of them.
Yeah. You know? Okay, well, I'm going to get my eyes gouged out by Hunter Biden when he becomes president. I don't know.
I'm going to be fully honest with you, Olivia. I may have had a little bit of a panic spiral while researching this. I knew all of this before.
Because you were like, they're coming for me now.
Listen, Olivia, I have I'm sorry. I should have given a warning before this episode. If you have anxiety like I do.
Now's a great time to tell them.
Now's a great time to skedaddle off of this video because you will start spiraling and call your mother like I did this morning at
how's she doing?
8 a.m. She's doing great. I love her.
Good.
We love her.
Love her too.
I was going to say her name, but I'm not revealing that information to the
they
internet.
already know. Oh, everybody listening? All the CIA that's listening to us?
They already know.
They know.
They already know. They know exactly what's happening in all of our lives. Anyways, it's fine. I wanted to direct you guys to yet another resource. I've mentioned so many things in this video already, but there are so many great resources on the internet that you can go and dig into if you want to know more about privacy and your rights and what's currently happening and reforms that have been made to the Patriot Act, because the Patriot Act is a temporary government program. But as Milton Friedman says, nothing is so permanent as a temporary government program. So true, Milton. So true. But I will say that because of Edward Snowden's bravery and the mass outcry of people who were like, yo, we were supposed to be spying on the bad guys in other countries, not on us, the government did start doing some reforms. So in 2015, they stopped doing the like mass collection, daily collection of phone records that they were doing.
That's nice.
But it didn't really end like the mass collections. It just kind of changed how they did them. Although the section that allowed all of this, 215, Section 215 of the Patriot Act, that did sunset in 2019 and the government didn't renew it. However, the government still has many things that they're doing to spy on you every single day. There are still several sections of the Patriot Act still in effect. And there was one more thing that's happening this fall. Let me find it. So sorry. Section 702. It's about to sunset this fall. Section 702 allows the NSA to gather communications from really anyone as long as it's with someone in a foreign country. So like they can target someone in a foreign country, pull those communications, like the actual communications that you have with them. And like if you've been in communication with that person who's in a foreign country, then you're basically your stuff is getting pulled too. They can't target explicitly American citizens, but they can kind of skirt around it in this way. And yeah, like I said, the government still has tools with which they can spy on you, and they are spying on you. And I don't know if you remember that release about the government putting people on watch lists for using like popular internet terminology, like looks maxing and like the Wojaks and stuff.
It's that whole like phenomenon where the left is like the new resurgence of right-wing bodybuilding or like getting healthy or dieting. It's like, why are all these things that are like good for you considered to be like right-wing extremist things now? But okay.
Dude, it's all a mess.
Looks maxing is hilarious.
It's all a mess. Yeah. We are always looks maxing over here. Oops. Now we're on a watch list. Yeah, I did a short video about this a while ago. That I thought was really funny. But yeah, I mean, there are people still surveilling you. I will say one thing. The program has kind of changed, and Congress hasn't been as supportive of this mass surveillance as they once were. And so parts of the Patriot Act keep coming up in Congress because they're set to sunset, and then Congress will renew them for longer. But parts of it have been removed. There's been a lot of progress, which is great. That's like really nice.
Later,
and that happens through education and through people talking about this stuff and through organizations who, you know, work with specific people in Congress to make this possible. But I'll just say this. The NSA doesn't need to go into your phone data and do bulk collections anymore, because all of y'all are posting everything on the internet already. It's all public. One thing that has just like really become a huge issue for me recently is privacy and how much we're exposing ourselves on the internet. And Olivia and I were talking about this earlier because there's this huge discourse happening right now on Twitter that will blow over in one singular day, where someone posted a screenshot of their friend kind of breaking up with them or just saying like, hey man, you've changed. Like, you're associated with certain political figures that I like really am uncomfortable with. Like, I still love you, whatever. This person posted that on the internet. And I just think it's crazy that we are now being like spies against each other and posting private communications we have with each other on the internet and posting everything about ourselves. Like, I think it's crazy that I've been on Twitter for several years and just post every opinion that flies through my head. I'm like, what?
Yeah. Post where I am, what are you doing?
Yeah, I'm terrified
what events you want to
now.
go to. You post who you're friends with every time you post a picture and tag people in it, especially on Twitter, because I meet a lot of Twitter figures, I guess, and political figures and whatnot. I'm very publicly friends with like a lot of people who, you know, the government probably don't like too much, not because they're a terrorist or anything, but because they're dissident. And I don't know if I see. Oh crap, my AirPod fell out. Hold on. What I was going to ask you was the whole friend breakup situation because of politics. Has that actually happened to you personally?
Kind of, right? When I was a bit younger, kind of. And I've had friends just like really distance themselves from me. Like, I remember when I was a teenager, I was super lefty, right? So all of my friends were really lefty. So it feels like I lost pretty much all of my friends from when I was in high school, which is really sad because I'd love to have relationships with them again. But I do think also part of not having those friendships is on me. Like, it's on me to reach out and rekindle those things and like show that I'm not this like evil right-wing caricature. Not that any of them have said that I am, but like I have this insecurity that that's what they think of me. And so my problem with him posting the text was not that he was upset about the friend breakup. I get it. Okay. That sucks. But that he posted like this really sensitive conversation between him and someone who is supposedly his best friend. And so kind of the point I'm trying to make here is that we're not valuing each other's privacy anymore. Like, I think we all have a decision to make in the age of the internet in terms of how much we want to expose about ourselves. But I do think it's really important that we all protect each other's privacy and respect each other's privacy. Like, I don't post hyper personal stories about anyone in my life online, for example. Like, sometimes there's stuff happening on the internet where I'm like, wow, that really reminds me of something happening in my family or with a friend of mine. But like, I don't go and post anything like that. I have taken screenshots of like weird DMs people have sent me before and posted those. I don't think I would even do that now. I feel like I've become really hypersensitive about this because I want to be a mom one day, and it scares me that like people could post about my children or like, I don't know. Like, I feel like as I get older.
You're such a good mom and you're not even a mom yet. That's amazing.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know about that. Hopefully, God willing, I'll be able to be a mom one day. But like, I really am valuing privacy more and more as I get older. And it scares me to think that the government has all of this information on me, or that even other people could have like all of this information. Like, I don't know. That feels very exposed and icky to me. Like, I prefer like a more private, subdued lifestyle where people know less and less about me. I don't know if you feel the same way, but I think that, you know, this hyper surveillance culture that's been created by the government has really fed into social media, and we've started surveilling each other. And so I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
There are some things you said that I feel similarly, and some things that maybe I haven't thought about or just don't feel strongly about. In terms of like sharing personal anecdotes from like other people in my life, I typically don't. If I ever do, I will never reveal their name. I don't like post a direct screenshot of what they said. I may like reword it in a post or something. Because I can definitely think of a couple times, especially as it pertains to COVID. I remember sharing things about how my brother, for example, wasn't allowed to play high school football after he did not get the vaccination. That was a personal thing for my personal life that involved somebody else's, like, I guess, personal medical stuff. I think not that I had the right to share it. Nobody in my family cared, but I also didn't
I don't think it's wrong to share.
It was more of a thing like, this is what's really happening because people are refusing to get the vaccine. So I could think of stuff like that. In terms of the guy who I actually follow, who posted the screenshot from his friend kind of saying, dude, this is why I'm distancing myself from you. It's because he couldn't really reconcile with his friend's politics or the people he was associated with. I think that if the OP was still attempting to be his friend, then he absolutely should not have posted that and should have probably tried to reconcile. If the conversation furthered beyond what we saw in the screenshot and there was just no reconciliation, or they just blocked each other and moved on, or whatever happened, or they just decided to go their separate ways, I kind of think it's fair game to post. I personally have been, I guess, friend broken up with over politics. Usually it's not that polite, though. I will say that. Usually I don't get like a nicely worded message that is just like sharing that person's feelings. But this person also is like not an extremist by any means, at least from what I can tell by following his Twitter. Like, I feel like our politics are pretty similar. So it's like, I don't know. As soon as someone is like, dude, I can't be friends with you because of what you say on Twitter or who you follow on Twitter, who you're associated with online, I just don't care about you anymore. I think I'm kind of desensitized to it because it's happened to me several times over the years. I just stopped caring because I was kind of like you, who I really was sensitive to what people perceive me as. On like on my Instagram is where I have 2 Instagrams. One is for politics. One is more personal. I used to keep those very, very separate and not try to let anyone in my personal life, because it's people I went to high school with, people I went to college with, people I wrestled with, people I've worked with, family members. I used to keep it very, very separate because I was very, very scared of somebody even finding out that I like voted for Trump or something. Now I do a lot of cross posts on both accounts, and I've posted my Fox News appearances on my personal account because it's something in my personal life as well. And I have had people unfollow me. I have had a couple people message me and be like, how are you black woman that's supporting Trump? I don't care about you anymore. I don't care, because I don't want those people in my life who can't take a political difference and still remain friends, because I have quite literally never broken up with a leftist or liberal or whatever leaning friend over politics or who they're associated with. I have never done that. I most likely never will do that unless they're like a straight up communist and they want to personally take my stuff and redistribute it. I will probably never, ever do that because it's just insane. It's just insane.
Yeah. I mean, I completely agree that friend breakups over politics suck, and they're quite it's
just, I don't feel mercy for you after you do that. I just don't feel mercy for you.
I feel mercy for everyone all the time.
You do. And you know,
I'm a very like,
you're basically Mary, and I love that for you.
No, I'm not. I'm not a perfect person at all, but that's why I feel mercy for people. Cause like people don't always act with complete grace or do the right thing all the time. That doesn't mean they forfeit their right to privacy. Like 2 wrongs don't make a right, in my opinion. And that's not me saying I'm perfect or like I've never posted screenshots. Like I said, people have DM'd me some crazy stuff and I totally have posted it. And I regret that, honestly, because I think just as things have progressed and moved further and further with social media and government surveillance, like I am all about locking it down. You know, and I know maybe this conversation doesn't seem to have the connecting line for the audience, and for those of you who are watching, but I do think privacy in general is a value I personally have developed way more strongly, maybe in the past year. Like I don't like posting text messages between people. I think that's kind of not great internet etiquette. I don't like seeing videos of people in public where they don't know they're being filmed. I really don't like that.
That one is actually my biggest pet peeve. And I hate that TikTok has made that so normal. It's like so funny to see somebody with maybe like a wardrobe malfunction, or somebody whose outfit you just don't agree with, or somebody whose hair you just don't agree with, or somebody who is disabled or overweight, or however they may look, and like putting a funny sound over it and recording them. That is heinous behavior. And I know these people are mostly teenagers who do that kind of stuff, but the people who make them viral are not all teenagers. It's people, adults retweeting it and reposting and stuff too. So I really hate that kind of stuff. At what point
have we turned people into objects of entertainment? Like unwitting objects of entertainment. Like I'm not advocating for laws about this kind of stuff. I really just think we need more internet etiquette. So I'm fine with being the annoying person on Twitter talking about privacy and waving my finger, as they say, at people who do stuff like this, because and also the internet is new. Like we're trying to figure it out. So it's not like I think someone's done forever because they posted a video of someone on the internet. No, I think we just should have more conversations about how we, maybe as a result of this encroaching government influence and invasion of our privacy, have started to believe that there is nothing for us to keep anymore, that everything is everyone's business. And it's not. It's not. Like, we need to lock it down. And, all of these things are choices you can make for how much you share about yourself. I advocate not sharing personally. But especially when it comes to other people, like I think people should, respect each other and not let the internet mob random people who don't know they're going viral.
I'll reflect on that. You may make me rethink certain things. I tend to Maybe I'm just kind of cynical or apathetic to certain types of people, but it's only when they really reveal who they truly are. So when somebody
Mhm.
is like in my DMs talking crazy, I really don't feel bad if I like post a
Yeah.
screenshot.
Well, you don't have
And
a
when
relationship with them, but,
Yeah, that's also true. And in the past, when someone has like friend broken up with me, I've written about it on Twitter, but I have
mhm.
never posted a screenshot.
I think that's fine.
But I have shared like basically what happened. But I've never like put any identities. I've never like told my followers like go after this person who used to be my friend. Like I would never do anything like that. But yeah, I totally see what you're saying, especially about videoing people in public. Obviously, in public, you don't really have an expectation of privacy. If you're walking down the street, somebody could completely legally take a picture or video of you. It's still not a nice thing to do.
No.
I would hate that if
Yeah.
it happened to me. I would hate that.
It did happen to me. One time I was in Argentina and I saw a guy videoing me
Oh, you told me
in a
about this. This
grocery
was like in the
store.
store, right? Yeah.
Yeah, in a grocery store. And I was like, hello. Like, what are you doing? And he was like, you are so beautiful. And I was like, oh my gosh. No. Like, tell me you are not taking a video of me to like
That's
store
creepy.
in your collection. Like, that's
That's
so
creepy.
disgusting to me.
That's really that's the other thing. That's the other side of it.
Yeah.
Maybe not filming somebody to make fun of them online, but filming somebody because you may find them attractive or whatever. That's really creepy. Don't do that, guys.
Yeah.
Don't do
it's
that.
Nasty. Anyways, closing thoughts, because this has been a long episode, but there's been so much to talk about. Going back to what our response is naturally to tragedy, I think it's always best to have your defenses up a little bit when something crazy has happened and really reconsider asking the government to step in and solve the problem. You'd be surprised at how much worse the solution is, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Like what they're presenting to you as a solution to all of your problems can actually create even more problems of the same nature. Like I would bet that we've created many terrorists with our occupation in the Middle East. Like that's just the nature of radicalization, right? So I really hope when the next tragedy happens, because tragedy, it's always senseless and it always feels really random, but the nature of the world is chaos, right? So another tragedy will happen. Hopefully not anytime soon, but this is just the way of the world. The next time it happens, I just really hope Americans take a lesson from the aftermath of 9/11 and are really cautious when accepting whatever kind of solution the government proposes. Olivia, do you have any final thoughts?
You think darkness is your ally, but you merely adopted the dark. I was born into it, molded by it. I didn't see the light until I was already a man. By then it was nothing to me but blinding.
That's my final thoughts. That was my Bane mask, by the way.
Yeah, I saw.
Thank
that
you.
was beautiful.
Thanks. I hope people who are only listening to audio, they realize I had my Bane mask on when I said that.
Olivia, where can we find you on social media?
I am on Twitter at Olivia and on Instagram at rondo.olivia. And please send your best Bane impressions to my DM. Thank you.
Amen. And I'm on Twitter at Liberty Anders. That's the only place you can find me because I value my privacy. And I did want to give one shout out to our listeners. If you love what we do here, part of what makes this podcast so fun is that we are learning out loud. So every week we pick subjects that we are not totally informed about most of the time. And we do a lot of research beforehand, or we bring someone on to interview. And that's really the spirit at FEE, the Foundation for Economic Education. Mm-hmm. We like to educate by learning ourselves. And so we've launched the Read Academy, which will start on October 2nd. And we'll be doing like a libertarian fee 101 crash course. Like you will learn about libertarian civics, Austrian economics, and like principles of libertarian leadership in the course. I'm so excited for it because it's being given by Dan Sanchez, who is brilliant and just really thoughtful, really well read. And so I'm excited to learn a lot and hopefully use what I learn in that course here on Indoctrination. But I wanted to invite you to come join us. We're on Locals. It's $5 a month. Not bad. So yeah, please sign up for that. I'll leave the link in the description. And leave us a comment. Tell us what you want us to talk about next. If you had an experience with 9/11, let us know. And please pray for the victims' families and everyone who's still suffering in the aftermath of 9/11. I hope you guys have an amazing week. Bye.
Bye.